Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to episode 60 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation C.A.K.E.D F.I.V.E. We begin this episode at the Alamode in the early 19th century, where we see a great number of Kids Next Door operatives have gathered in front of a mansion. Inside of the mansion, we see that a Kids Next Door operative has snuck into what looks like a pantry, and he takes a piece of paper off of a pedestal. When the Kids Next Door operative places the piece of paper inside of his shirt, he realizes too late that he accidentally set off a trap, and this trap activates an ice cream explosion which covers not just the mansion but the entirety of the Alamode. The next scene takes us to the Sector V treehouse in the present day of the series, and we see that number one is holding a meeting with regards to the delightful children from down the lane's 5th birthday of the year. According to number one, some spies of the Kids Next Door have reported that the delightful children intend to eat this birthday cake in their mansion, and they also set up speakers so that kids from a great distance can hear the delightful children eat the birthday cake, because like the previous caked entries, the delightful children have no intention of sharing their birthday cake, and they want to rub it in the faces of all the other kids. Number one's plan for this particular caked mission is for the Sector V operatives to hide inside of a Trojan cake to trick the delightful children into bringing the Trojan cake into the mansion. That way, once the actual birthday cake arrives, the Sector V operatives will emerge from the Trojan cake and surprise attack the delightful children to defeat them so that they can share the birthday cake with all the other kids. Number two comments that this mission sounds particularly dangerous, and number one agrees, or yes, number one says this is going to be a particularly dangerous mission, and that's why he's arranged a field trip of sorts, you could say. Number one says that before they go on this mission, they are going to pay their respects at the Alamode, and the four other Sector V operatives show signs of respect when they hear number one mention the Alamode. Number two and number five also remove their headwear when number one mentions the Alamode. So the next scene takes us to the Alamode in the present day of the series. And although number four did show signs of respect towards the Alamode in the previous scene, in this scene he's complaining about how bored he is. Another Kids Next Door operative overhears number four comment about being bored, and this Kids Next Door operative, voiced by Josh Peck, cheerfully comments that it's a Kids Next Door tradition for operatives to pay their respects at the Alamode before going on a particularly dangerous mission. The operative introduces himself to be number 50 million BC, and he says that he's the chief archaeologist of at least the group of Kids Next Door operatives that are at the Alamode right now, if not the chief archaeologist of the organization collectively. But in any case, number 50 million BC gives the Sector V operatives a tour of the Alamode, and he tells them the story of the scene that we saw at the beginning of the episode, and he fills in some details that further explain the opening scene. For example, the mansion at the beginning of this episode was the mansion of the annoyingly cute triplets who lived upon the hill, and their mother baked very delicious birthday cakes. Like the delightful children, however, the annoyingly cute triplets never shared their birthday cake with anyone else. And the Kids Next Door operative who we saw inside of the mansion at the beginning of the episode is called number 19th Century. And yes, the piece of paper that he took was the recipe that the annoyingly cute triplets' mom had created with regards to these especially delicious birthday cakes. And yes, like we saw at the beginning of the episode, the trap activated an ice cream explosion, which trapped all of the Kids Next Door operatives at the Alamode at that point in time in ice cream, and they've been frozen in that ice cream for a very long time. Number 50 million BC then further explains that over the course of 10 years, they found and unthawed almost all of the operatives who were at the Alamode at that point in time. And all of those operatives were decommissioned because they are chronologically over 13 years old, even though they are biologically still kids. Number 50 million BC makes a point to mention that at this point in time, number 19th century is the only operative who was at the Alamode at that point in time that they haven't found yet. And the archaeologist operatives continue to search for the cake recipe in honor of the memory of the Kids Next Door operatives who were at the Alamode at that point in time. Suddenly, another Kids Next Door operative emerges from a tent, and he tells number 50 million BC to quickly come inside the tent. Something important is happening. Number 50 million BC rushes into the tent, and number 1 tries to listen from outside to figure out what's going on. But number 50 million BC quickly emerges from the tent and tells the operatives present that number 19th century has been found, and he's in the middle of being unthawed. So number 50 million BC, the Sector V operatives, and any other operatives for that matter, present enter the tent. And they see that some operatives are unthawing number 19th century with the help of some dogs who are licking the ice cream away. So after the dogs lick off all the ice cream, number 19th century regains consciousness, and number 50 million BC wastes no time in inquiring number 19th century about the cake recipe. Number 19th century, though, admits that he doesn't remember much of anything. Number 2 figures that this must be the result of brain freeze amnesia. But then suddenly, some of number 19th century's memories return to him, and he remembers the Alamode, and he urges some of the other operatives present right now to prepare for a battle against the annoyingly cute triplets. But number 1 calms number 19th century down and clarifies for him that number 19th century is no longer in the 19th century. Number 19th century looks around the tent, and then he inquires about what happened or how it happened or something along those lines. And number 5 is about to explain to number 19th century about how he was frozen in time, but number 19th century interrupts number 5 and reveals that he's trying to figure out when girls joined the Kids Next Door organization. Number 86 then enters the tent, and she says that Global Command has issued an order that number 19th century be decommissioned like his contemporary operatives from the 19th century. Number 50 million BC objects to this. He says that there's a possibility that number 19th century may know the cake recipe, but number 86 says that she doesn't care. She intends to decommission number 19th century like all of the other operatives that are chronologically over 13 years old despite biologically still being kids. Number 86 is then angered when number 19th century tells number 86 to go get him some food, and she proceeds to beat up number 19th century and drags him off. Number 50 million BC is in despair over the possibility of the cake recipe being lost to time forever. And number 1 shows sympathy towards number 50 million BC. Number 1 offers to give number 50 million BC a piece of the Delightful Children's birthday cake once the Sector V operatives finish their mission. And then number 1 tells his teammates it's time for them to begin their mission. So the next scene takes us to space, where we see number 86 is piloting a space vehicle, and number 19th century is in a chamber in the back of the vehicle. Number 19th century is still amazed. Number 19th century is still processing how he's no longer in his own time period, and he's amazed at the technology that allows space travel, especially to the moon, and he's also amazed when he hears that there are 50 states in the United States. but he still acts dismissive towards girls being part of the Kids Next Door organization. And number 86 responds that the current supreme leader of the Kids Next Door organization is a girl, number 362. Suddenly, number 86 notices on her map radar device that the vehicle is closing in on something, and this confuses number 86 because she says that they shouldn't be at the moon just yet. But then she notices something. We, the viewers, don't see what number 86 is seeing, and number 86 quotes a famous Star Wars line about how something isn't a moon. So the next scene takes us to the Sector V operatives. Yes, the next scene takes us to the Sector V operatives who are inside of the, yes, they're all in the Trojan Cake right now, waiting for the delightful children to arrive. They hear noise outside of the Trojan Cake and think that the delightful children have arrived. So the Sector V operatives emerge from the Trojan Cake, but they find out that the noise was coming from number 35, who was sent by number 362 to relay a message. According to this message, number 86, yes, according to number 362's message, number 86 and number 19th Century have not arrived at the Moonbase headquarters, and number 362 has issued an pants on fire emergency, or something along those lines anyway. And number 4, though, inquires about what they're going to do about the CAKED mission right now. Number 1 does acknowledge that they only get 5 chances a year to get the delightful children's birthday cake. So number 1 instructs number 4 to stay inside of the Trojan Cake and to be on standby to communicate with the rest of the Sector V operatives. Yes, the plan is, once the Trojan Cake enters the mansion and once the actual birthday cake arrives, number 4 is to communicate or use a communicator to contact the rest of his teammates and let them know so that they can perform a surprise attack both inside and outside. And number 4 agrees with this. So number 4 re-enters the Trojan Cake, and the rest of the Sector V operatives join number 35 on his vehicle, and they head off to the Moonbase headquarters. The next scene takes us to a room that looks like it's made out of dessert. And we see a few elite ice cream men, including one named Chef Pierre, have captured number 86 and number 19th Century. And they bring the 2 operatives before Father, who is sitting on a throne. Father figures that these 2 operatives are probably trying to stop him and the elite ice cream men from the plans regarding the delightful children's birthday cake. And Father also confuses number 19th Century to be a girl, or he mistakenly believes number 19th Century is a girl, and number 19th Century is angered by this, and while he's ranting, he calls number 86 a sissy girl, which angers number 86, and she starts to beat up number 19th Century. Father, though, yells at the 2 operatives, and this causes the fighting to stop. And Father begins to brag about how the Kids Next Door won't be able to he says they won't be able to stop him and the elite ice cream men from getting this birthday cake to the delightful children. Number 86 responds that the Kids Next Door will search far and wide for the birthday cake, no matter where on Earth it is. But then Father reveals the cake isn't on Earth right now. In fact, number 86 and number 19th Century are in the cake. So yes, we then see that there's a giant birthday cake out in space. This is where they are right now. And Father explains that the cold vacuum of space was the perfect location to construct an ice cream cake. And number 19th Century is confused. He's never heard of ice cream cake before, and he's baffled that it exists. Father is confused by number 19th Century's confusion. He thinks number 19th Century doesn't get out much, in his words, but number 86 clarifies that number 19th Century is naturally an operative from the 19th century. So he's not familiar with things that exist in this time but didn't exist in his own time period. Father is amused by this, and he inquires if number 19th Century wants to watch a cartoon on television, And this confuses number 19th century, and Father and number 86 both laugh about how number 19th century doesn't know what they're talking about, or what the joke is, or what they're laughing about. But then number 19th century samples some of the cake wall, and this angers Father, who activates his fire powers and says that only the delightful children may eat this cake. But because of his fire powers being activated, Father is accidentally melting the room. And Chef Pierre has to remind Father that this is an ice cream cake. If Father uses his fire powers, then he'll melt the cake away. So Father calms down, deactivates his fire powers, and he comments that there are other ways to capture the operatives, or to deal with the operatives, or something along those lines anyway. So some of the elite ice cream men capture number 19th century and number 86. And number 19th century also comments that this birthday cake is almost as delicious as the birthday cake that the mom of the annoyingly cute triplets would make, and this catches Father's attention. Father reveals that the annoyingly cute triplets' mom is his great-grandma, and he inquires number 19th century about what number 19th century would know about his great-grandma's cake recipe. Number 19th century then claims that he knows the recipe by heart, and Father demands that number 19th century tell him the cake recipe. Number 19th century refuses, so Father decides to have a test run on something. So Father instructs Chef Pierre to activate this test run. So Chef Pierre locks onto the kids next door's orbital ice cream storage facility. Once the facility has been locked onto, we find out that the candles on top of the birthday cake are laser guns, or laser cannons, and the lasers from these candle cannons destroy the facility, or they're going to. Yes, Father says that these lasers will completely destroy and wipe out the ice cream on the storage facility. And he says that they will go through with it unless number 19th century tells him the cake recipe. Number 19th century says he can't do that. So Father orders the laser cannons to be fired, and they are. So the kids next door orbital ice cream storage facility is wiped out afterwards. And Father says that they're also planning to wipe out all of the ice cream on Earth, so that the ice cream cake will be the only ice cream left. And once the delightful children eats it, that means the delightful children will have the last ice cream in the universe. But he says he might reconsider if number 19th century tells him the cake recipe, but number 19th century still won't say. So Father orders some of the elite ice cream men to lock up number 86 and number 19th century, and they proceed to do so. The next scene takes us to the moon base, where we see the Sector V operatives, besides number 4, are meeting with number 362. And number 5 feels pain when the ice cream storage facility is destroyed. And then number 60 enters the room to tell number 362 that the orbital ice cream storage facility has been destroyed. Number 362 orders a visual on what's going on, and the visual does show everyone present in the room right now the giant ice cream cake. And yes, they quickly figure out that this is the delightful children's cake for this year. And number 60 comments about how they should send out a fleet of operatives to destroy the birthday cake. But number 362 points out that number 86 and number 19th century are likely on the cake right now, so they'll get caught in the crossfire. So number 1 suggests that he and the other present Sector V operatives sneak onto the birthday cake and liberate number 86 and number 19th century and get them out of there before they get rid of the cake. And number 60 inquires about how they're going to sneak onto the birthday cake without any of the enemies knowing. Number 3 says she has an idea. So the next scene takes us back to Earth, and we see that the 4 other Sector V operatives have stopped an ice cream truck. Number 3 is trying to order some ice cream, but the ice cream man insists that he and his co-workers only sell ice cream to responsible adults, and wants number 3 to leave right now. Or yes, number 3 and the others to leave right now. But number 3 points out a ice cream. She points to a certain ice cream flavor, but doesn't really specify what it is. So the ice cream man turns away, and number 3 tries what I believe is supposed to be the Vulcan nerve pinch from Star Trek, or at least a reference to the Vulcan nerve pinch, but it doesn't work. And so number 5 just knocks out the ice cream man with a 2x4 technology weapon. So the next scene takes us to back inside of the birthday cake in a cell where number 86 and number 19th century are right now. Number 86 complains about the flavor of the cell. It's sherbet ice cream flavor. And she then blames number 19th century for them being in this mess. And then she inquires why number 19th century never told her that he knows the recipe for the most delicious of birthday cakes. But number 19th century admits he actually doesn't know the cake recipe. He lied about it. And number 86 inquires why he lied about that detail to father. And number 19th century's response is that he was trying to help a fetching lady who was in trouble, in his words. At first, number 86 doesn't know what number 19th century is talking about, but then she quickly realizes that the fetching lady he speaks of is her. And number 19th century says that he was considered in his words, a dandy operative during his time period, and he was known for having some chivalry. And number 86 admits that she can respect number 8. Yes, number 86 says that number 19th century's chivalry actually has warmed her up to him. Or yes, number 86 says that she's warmed up to number 19th century because of his chivalry. And then number 19th century makes a comment that dismisses the fact that girls are now part of the Kids Next Door organization, which angers number 86, and she punches number 19th century in response. So the next scene shows us outside of the birthday cake. We see that, yes, the 4 other Sector V operatives have taken control of the ice cream truck, and they activated its space vehicle mode. So they're on their way to inside of the birthday cake. Number 2 is piloting, and he also is wearing elite ice cream armor, and he requests permission to enter the cake. Chef Pierre responds to number 2's request and says there's no need to request permission because they're not kids, obviously falling for the disguise. So he tells number 2 to just land anywhere in the birthday cake. So yes, the ice cream truck lands inside of a hangar within the birthday cake, and now that they've entered, number 1 has the next plan in mind, or number 1 explains what the next phase of the plan is. Number 1 instructs number 2 to gain access to the computer system of the birthday cake and try to locate or find the location of number 86 and number 19th century. And then number 3 and number 5 will liberate those 2 from the cell. Number 2 inquires what number 1 plans to do, and number 1 says that he's going to compliment the chef, or he says something along those lines at least. After a quick scene showing number 4 still waiting inside of the Trojan cake for the delightful children to arrive, we return to the inside of the ice cream cake. And number 5 is wearing the elite ice cream men uniform too. She's in disguise like number 2 was. And number 3 is acting like a prisoner. Or yes, number 5 is pretending to be an elite ice cream man, while number 3 is pretending to be a prisoner. And so they head to the cell block. And number 5, when they arrive, one of the elite ice cream men inquires about how number 5 seems short for an ice cream man. One of them says that number 5 seems short for an ice cream man, a reference to the Stormtrooper line from A New Hope. And number 5 points out that she's taller than another ice cream man. And so when this elite ice cream man turns around to look who she's talking about, number 3 once again tries the Vulcan nerve pinch, but it doesn't work. Actually, the elite ice cream man thanks number 3 because he says that she helped him with a crick in his neck. But then number 5 knocks out the elite ice cream man, and then number 5 and number 3 quickly knock out all the other elite ice cream men. Number 5 goes off to find number 86 and number 19th century, while number 3 stays in the cell block to keep guard. And then someone contacts number 3 or someone contacts cell block inquiring what's going on, and number 3 tries to assure the elite ice cream man on the other line that there's nothing going on, but says, or that everything is fine, and there's actually a party that the elite ice cream man should go to with all of his friends, and he says that they'll do just that. So back in the main chamber of the birthday cake, Father and Chef Pierre are talking about how the laser cannons have been perfected so they can begin to eliminate more ice cream on Earth right now. And Father decides that they should eliminate Texas's ice cream supply first for the fun of it. That's what Father says anyway. And so they're preparing to, or before they do that, Father also instructs Chef Pierre to bring number 19th century here. He wants number 19th century to see more of the ice cream be destroyed. But then another elite ice cream man enters the chamber and tells the other elite ice cream men that there's a party in cell block going on. So all the elite ice cream men run off to go to the party, or the alleged party. And at first Father yells about how he didn't give the okay for a party, but then he's kind of complaining that no one invited him. He's like, he's a villain, but he still likes to party once in a while, he says, or along those lines. And when Father turns away from the room, he's facing out the window. That's when number 1 sneaks into the room, and he starts to set his own plan into motion. So back in the cell block, number 5 finds the cell that number 86 and number 19th century are in. But when she opens the cell door, she sees the two kissing each other. And so number 5 proceeds to sing the old kissing sitting in a tree song. Yes, she sings the sitting in a tree song while calling number 19th century fancy pants. And number 86 punches number 19th century, and then the 3 of them try to head out of the cell block. But then they see, number 3 is acting like a bouncer for this private party that she claims is going on, and Chef Pierre insists that his name must be on the list. But then they see the other 3 operatives trying to escape, and then, the Rouge is up, and so number 3, number 5, number 86, and number 19th century are chased back into the hallway where all the cells were, and they're fighting off against the elite ice cream men who are using ice cream guns. It's a back and forth between ice cream guns between both sides. Number 5 then contacts number 2, requesting that he find them a way to get them out of there, another way out. And number 2 finds out that the other operative's current location is right above him, number 2. So number 2 tells them that they need to lick the floor that they're standing on so that they can break through the floor and reach the ice cream truck. While number 5 and number 3 are defending against the elite ice cream men, number 19th century and number 86 are licking the floor so that they can go through with this plan. Meanwhile, number 1 has placed explosives all over the controls within the main chamber, and he's about to leave. But Father reveals he knows number 1 is here, and then Father uses his psychic powers to destroy the explosives. And number 1, though, is willing to fight back. So number 1 pulls out a candle lever to use like a weapon, but then he licks some of the cake off of the candle, which angers Father, and he activates his fire powers. But then he quickly realizes that he's melting more of the cake, and Number One points this out. Father says that there are other ways to deal with, says that he will deal with Number One by other means. So Father pulls out a candle lever himself to use like a weapon, but he also uses his psychic powers to control more candle levers, and he sets them on fire. But they don't seem to be melting the cake, maybe because it's a lower amount of fire, or not as intense of a fire level. But in any case, Number One and Father proceed to begin to fight. So yes, Number 3, Number 5, Number 86, and Number 19th Century do break through the floor, and they're on top of the ice cream truck that they hijacked earlier. They get inside. Number 2 wonders, Number 5 inquires Number 2 about if Number 1 has made it back yet. Number 2 notices on his tracker, on his tracking radar, that Number 1 is actually closing in on them. And then they see Number 1 is continuing to fight Father, but Number 1 is growing more and more exhausted, while Father doesn't seem to be breaking a sweat. So at first, the other operatives leave the ice cream truck to try and help Number 1, but then more elite ice cream men arrive to attack them, so they're forced to retreat back in the ice cream truck. But then they notice that Number 19th Century didn't retreat with them. He's actually, before Father can deliver the finishing blow to Number 1, Number 19th Century has made it to the other side, and he grabbed some of the cake wall, and he's eating it to anger Father, who's melting more of the cake because of his fire powers. And then he knocks Number 19th Century away, but when he does so, he ends up opening up Number 19th Century's shirt, and then they notice that there's an imprint on Number 19th Century's chest. It's the cake recipe. Number 19th Century realizes that when he placed the cake recipe inside of his shirt back before he was frozen, this must have been what happened. The ice cream explosion must have left an imprint of the cake recipe on his chest when he put it in his shirt. And Father is delighted to see that the cake recipe is within his grasp now. He will use the cake recipe to create an even better cake than this one. So he proceeds to start to read the recipe, but Father doesn't realize he still had his fire powers activated. So the cake is melting, the ice cream cake, and drips of it get on top of the imprint of the recipe. And Father panics, and then he says how the cake recipe has been, in his words, smudgified, or it's smudgifying is what he says. And then he quietly says no in despair when the cake recipe is lost. And then he shouts no at the top of his lungs, and he shouts this to the sky. And he activates his fire powers, which break through the cake, and it actually also destroys a space vehicle that some of the ice cream men were using that looks like a knife. So now it's crashing down onto the cake. So essentially it looks like a giant knife cutting a giant cake. Father then blames Number 19th Century for this happening, despite it being Father's own fault, and he says that he will get rid of Number 19th Century so he won't ruin anything ever again. But the crash between the ice cream man vehicle and the birthday cake, or the ice cream cake, is causing Father to be distracted, so he loses his balance. Number 1 and Number 19th Century do make a jump for it to the ice cream truck that the operatives are in, because the split is causing the cake to fall apart in half. So yes, they're jumping in the air trying to make it, but it looks like they're going to miss. But then Number 86 grabs Number 19th Century, and Number 1 is hanging on to Number 19th Century. And Number 86 pulls them in, and the Kids Next Door operatives get out of the ice cream truck. In the ice cream truck, they get out of the birthday cake, and then the cake and the knife-shaped space vehicle fall to Earth. And the ice cream cake melts. The ice cream cake melts once it reaches Earth's atmosphere. And then we head to the Delightful Children's mansion, where we see the Delightful Children finally going to the Trojan cake. Number 4 emerges from the Trojan cake, demanding that they hand over the cake. But then, before anything else can happen, number 4 and the Delightful Children notice the giant birthday cake falling down. And so Father, some elite ice cream men, and some regular ice cream men, or lower ice cream men, have all landed in the Delightful Children, have all landed in the mansion's premise, while number 4 is cheerful that cake has arrived. Next up, we head to the moon base, and number 86 comments that she's grown to love number 19th Century, despite some of his flaws. But then she says it's still not enough to not decommission number 19th Century. So number 19th Century is decommissioned, and number 50 million BC is in despair about this because of the cake recipe being lost in time forever. After the decommissioning process, number 50 million BC still tries to inquire if number 19th Century remembers the cake recipe or the Alamode. At first, number 19th Century seems to recognize the Alamode, but then he questions what the Alamode is, and number 50 million BC is in despair over this. The episode ends with the Delightful Children complaining to Father about this birthday, and number 4 is enjoying the birthday cake pieces that are falling from the sky. Yes, that's how we end this episode. So there you go. This was the 5th CAKED entry in the series. Yes. The 5th entry of the CAKED saga for Codename Kids Next Door. And like Operation CAKED 4, this CAKED entry is a full episode, and Father is also involved in this episode too, like Operation CAKED 4. In fact, the Delightful Children actually played a very minor role in this episode. They only appeared at the very end of the episode, actually. So Father was really more the main villain. And we also got to see more of the ice cream men, both the lower ice cream men and the elite ice cream men. We actually do get to meet Chef Pierre, who is a very specialized member of the elite ice cream men. And another detail is, yes, that's right. This is the CAKED episode, or the CAKED entry, I should say. Yes, this is the CAKED entry where characters in the entry itself explicitly mention that the Delightful Children celebrate their birthday 5 times a year. So yes. I mentioned that before in previous recap and thoughts videos for the CAKED saga, but this is the one where they explicitly say it in the show itself. So now, this is when that finally assured viewers about the confusion, or clarified confusion for any viewers, and clarified that, yes, Codename Kids Next Door does have serialized elements, and the CAKED entries are because each member of the Delightful Children celebrate their birthday at different times of the year, but they all celebrate together because of their whole hive mind situation. And now another detail about this, we get to meet number 19th Century. Yes, we get to find out that the Kids Next Door organization had existed back in the 19th century, and we do get to meet one of those operatives. Tom Warburton did comment on one of his blog posts that number 19th Century's situation was inspired by Captain America being frozen in time and then unthawing in the present day. Yes, he was reading the Marvel Comics The Ultimates. That's what inspired number 19th Century for this episode. And with number 19th Century himself, yes, he's shown to be, yes, number 19th Century, you definitely see, yes, how there's a case of value dissonance. That idea about how the values, what was considered the norm of the values or of that time are different from this time, because we do see that number 19th Century, number 19th Century doesn't really hate girls, but he does act dismissive towards the idea of girls being part of the Kids Next Door organization. But at the same time, they do show us that number 19th Century isn't a bad person, even though he has those very outdated views. They do show he still does have good qualities to him, such as his chivalry, which number 86 also admired, even though she didn't like his outdated views about girls and his dismissive behavior towards girls joining the Kids Next Door organization. Some fans actually did note, some fans made a point to note how number 86 dealing with number 19th century's attitude towards girls was not so different from how number 86 acted when she first appeared in the series, when number 86 acted dismissive towards number 86 acted dismissive towards boys initially, or number 86 had more of an outright hate towards boys when she first appeared. Although some fans have noted that they did eventually toned it down with regards to number 86 hating boys. It just became more number 86 being a jerk to everyone, not just necessarily boys, but was considered an unlikable jerk by many. And even then, while number 86 does come off like a jerk, she still does have good qualities to her. And that's what some people think might have been. Some fans have interpreted number 19th century to be a parallel to number 86. They both have some unflattering viewpoints in some ways, but at the same time, they still do have some admirable qualities too. And at the same time, yes, the show itself doesn't present their unflattering qualities to be a good thing. Not at all. Their unflattering qualities are intended to be shown to be bad things, but at the same time, it shows just because they might have some unflattering qualities, it doesn't make them bad people at heart. So again, I think that's a good way of recognizing shades of gray. It's not always just purely good or purely bad. There are cases where people can have flattering and unflattering qualities, those shades of gray when it comes to the morality spectrum. So we also did get to meet another operative, number 50 million BC, who is an archaeologist. So it was cool to learn about the archaeologist operatives of the Kids Next Door, how they study the past of the Kids Next Door. I thought that was pretty cool. And another detail would be, number 50 million BC. One scene I did like in particular was how number 1 showed sympathy towards number 50 million BC over the cake recipe for the annoyingly cute triplets' mom, her cake recipe being lost to time. I thought that was pretty heartwarming how number 1 offered to share some birthday cake from the delightful children with number 50 million BC. It does go to show that, again, number 1 can come off being standoffish. Yes, number 1 can be standoffish at times, but he still is a good person at heart who does care about the Kids Next Door organization overall. So I thought that was pretty heartwarming that number 1 offered to save some birthday cake for number 50 million BC. And yeah, Josh Peck, I think, did a good job voicing the character. And yes, we did get to learn a little bit about Father's family history. His great-grandma was the mother of the annoyingly cute triplets. That was another detail about Father's family history, or his family tree. And the TV movie will shed some more light about Father's family tree and how that ties into another character. We'll get to that eventually. We'll cross that bridge eventually. So we'll cross that bridge eventually. So otherwise, I guess the other big detail to mention is how this episode is also a reference to Star Wars. Operation Snowing from Season 4 was a nod to Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and Operation Elections from earlier in Season 5 also had referenced Episode 4, A New Hope, with some elements of Episode 6, Return of the Jedi in there too. And that was the case here for this episode. Yes, this episode referenced Episode 4 and Episode 6, A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. And I also heard that they might have actually referenced some details from the expanded universe, or at this point in time, those stories would be branded under the Legends brand, from what I understand anyway. But yes, that's a detail that I've been hearing too, that some stories from the Legends brand might have been referenced in this episode too. So I thought that was a pretty interesting detail. And I guess otherwise, Yeah, that's about it. I know that was definitely on the longer side, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of content to recap, and there was quite a bit of details in this particular caked entry too. So overall, I would say this is probably my favorite caked entry, or yes, my favorite entry from the caked saga would probably be Operation CAKED 5. I liked how more Kids Next Door operatives besides the Sector V operatives were involved in this particular episode. I did like learning a little bit more about the organization, like the archaeologist branch of the organization, but I also did like learning about the history of the Kids Next Door in the past, or at least how the Kids Next Door were, or an event, a historical moment from the 19th century relating to the Kids Next Door. And I did like how Father got to be the main villain for this episode, and I did also liked the yes, I also liked the Star Wars references naturally. So yeah, there you go. That was on the longer side, but we've covered it all now. So as of this video, we've now discussed episode 60 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time.